So, welcome to another edition of Influence, the global podcast, shining a spotlight on the influencer marketing industry. And I'm delighted to have a super guest with me today, Amy Rowlinson, who is the host of a fantastic podcast, which I have to say I've listened to, called Focus on Why. So, Amy, it's lovely to see you today.
Thank you very much, Gordon. Not only have you listened to it, but you're about to appear on it too.
That's right, because I've just done a recording with you recently, haven't I? Yes, which was fun, really fun. Yes, so obviously purpose is a big part of making somebody influential, isn't it? People want to understand what makes them tick. But before we get into the details of the podcast itself, perhaps you'd like to sort of share a little bit about your background, because I know particularly this podcast isn't the first one that you've done. So if you can just share with our listeners and viewers a little bit about your background, that would be great.
Thanks, Gordon. Yeah, this is the second podcast. So the first podcast I had was with somebody else, with Dan Hulbert. He was my business partner at the time. And we had the Property Vault podcast. And I was talking all things practical property. And we had a business around that. We were doing all sorts of trainings and helping people to help boost their property portfolios from a practical perspective. And at the beginning of lockdown, that all changed. Where I thought we were going to take our business online, Dan said to me, actually, I kind of want to sort of let this thing go. And I was really shocked. It wasn't what I was expecting. I'd been putting a lot of sweat equity into the business. About 18 months prior to that, we'd been hosting network events. Everything was going really well. But when things just aren't there, that it's not right. And it was great that Dan shared that. And to be fair, he pointed me into the direction of where I was heading. And I really appreciated him, not necessarily at the time, but in reflection, just sharing with me what I'd been sort of focusing on and what I'd been doing and what I'd been sharing online with others. It was more about the purpose. It was more about life in a different perspective. And to be fair, property necessarily wasn't my thing. It was the fuel that got me to where I wanted to go. And it's really done a huge amount for my family. So yeah, that was the first podcast.
And so when did you start this one? The one that we're talking about now?
Yeah, so after that phone call with Dan, the bit of a shock, I sort of thought, well, what am I going to do? What is it that I want to talk about? What do I want to share? And the one thing I wanted to carry on doing was having a podcast. It was a medium that I absolutely loved. I feel really at home in this space. And within a week, we had to close out the Property Vault. And on that morning when I woke up, I had the idea for Focus on Why. I'd been letting my subconscious sort of run with different ideas. And I woke up that morning saying, I know where I'm going to take the audience. I know where I can affect some influence and I know what impact I can make. And that is all about purpose and helping people to find their purpose.
And what's been the reaction? Because you've got, I know, a sizable audience now. What's been the reaction from the listeners?
I knew when I started recording, before I'd even released the podcast, before I'd even launched it, that it was going to be a change maker. And that was said with confidence because of the people that I was having on the show and the interviews that I'd already amassed before I'd even launched. I'd recorded 30 episodes. So I knew very quickly that this podcast was going to create that ripple effect within the world and within this space that I knew has a great way of bringing people on board. Podcasting is so personal. It's such a great medium because people can take it wherever they go. It's so portable. And with that, what you're doing is you're connecting one-on-one with someone when you're talking to them. They're listening and they may be walking the dog, they may be exercising, they may be cooking dinner, there may be lots of different things, but what they are doing is they're listening to you and they're not necessarily scrolling through and looking through different feeds because you've got their 100% attention. And so with that in mind, I knew that I could then sort of take my mission, my personal mission in life, which is to help people to stop filling in the moments and to create moments that are fulfilling. And just having that ability to recognize and discern a difference between those two sort of autopilot modes or actually being purposeful makes such a difference. And so that's what I was doing, and that's where I knew I could help people to reach their potential. I'm a life purpose coach. It just made perfect sense.
No, absolutely. And when you speak to business owners in your work, I guess a lot of them haven't got their purpose fixed. And what sort of guidance do you try and help people get them much more aligned in that thinking?
Yeah, it's really simple, Gordon. It's a case of when you know who you can help and the problem that you can solve and what impact you can have, you place people at the heart of your decisions. And in a business, placing people at the heart of the decisions of the business, you're going to create purposeful and fulfilling work, which will solve personal, professional, and global problems. And when you're bringing people on board with your values, with your vision, with your mission, it just makes sense. And this is where, when you're looking from a business perspective and you're recruiting people from day one and you're bringing them on board and aligning their personal values, what's happening is that people aren't going just they go to work to fulfill their needs and their values. They don't know that that's necessarily the case, but that's what they're doing. But when they know that their values and their needs are being met and they're being supported and they are valued for their work, that's the difference.
No, I love that. I love that. And you mentioned personal values. How important is it now for leaders of business to articulate their personality in purpose?
I think it's crucial. It's becoming not, it used to be a case of it was a nice to have in business. You hear all the time that, oh, I've got this vision, I've got these values, and they were tick boxes. They were often found on the wall. But if you ask people in the business, what are your values, they would be hard pushed to sort of tell you them unless they referred to that piece of paper in their filing cabinet or the piece of paper on the wall. But now it's there. It's the heartbeat of the business. It's becoming so much more of an essential as opposed to a nice to have. And I love that shift in change. And yes, it's being led by the big companies, the big names that are out there. And people say, well, it works for them because that's the size of the business that they are. No, it's relevant to everybody. And understanding your personal values as the leader of an organization, and you are that visionary, you are that guide that is going to take everybody with you, absolutely essential.
And so I know that you've done quite a lot of work in your personal life, haven't you, with cricket? And I'm quite interested to sort of extend that conversation about how that's been a part of your life strategy. It's not just about business. It's about you having influence in these other personal areas. Like you were telling me, you've been a games maker and you've done quite a lot of volunteering. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I've been a volunteer since I can remember. It's just part of who I am because I like to give and I like to use my skills in other areas, not just in a workplace, but in all different areas. And by applying those transferable skills, you can see such a difference. And it makes a difference for my life because if we've got better surroundings and environments around us, then that I can benefit from that as well. So there's always that altruistic move, but there's that great drive from within that that you're also going to benefit. And what I did back in 2011 was I saw that our local cricket club needed some help. And I knew that by pulling resources together and recognizing who was already in our space and tapping those individuals to collectively achieve just an incredible change on the club, it made a huge difference. So it galvanized the club, it brought people together, it brought the community together. And the focus was to try and bring new people into the club, new members. What we actually did was bring the community and put it on the map again. And it's now thriving. We're now down the line 10 years later. But at the time, all I did was I reached out to the local businesses and asked them what they could do to help, and amassed £36,000 worth of resources from the local community, from within the club, in terms of professional help, in terms of the hours, in terms of materials. And we got the local club involved. We got the county club involved. Kent Cricket Club came down. All their players came down. We had former international players come down and help. Chris Tavaray and his wife came and they painted the ceiling. We had the mayor come down. We had local businesses come down. It was incredible. And this is all over a weekend. It was like a cross between ground force and changing rooms. We turned the club around. And for that, I was recognised by Kent Cricket Club. They nominated me for a county Oscar. We were a showcase club for Kent. And then I was nominated for a national Oscar, which I then won. And an Oscar is an Outstanding Service to Cricket award. So I went to Lords and Michael Vaughan gave me that award. And I happily received it on behalf of the club. It was a team effort. 175 people came together to achieve that weekend, and it was just incredible. But it's about recognizing what skills you have there right in front of you, within yourself and within those of others.
But somebody had to galvanize them all. At the end of the day, and this is what's so important, when it comes to purpose and being an inspiring individual. I'm guessing the club needed to make these changes, but somebody, because a lot of people out there that will say, I know we need to do it, let somebody else do it. But you stepped up and you helped, bring those people together. And I would imagine that every single one of those people that were involved in that project celebrated your success as well, because it was a team effort that helped. They were able to see a vision, weren't they? They were able to see a purpose, and that's what I think is really so important. Now, how important is it, do you think, to leverage social media? And what have you done to promote the podcast and indeed your work through social media?
It's a really interesting question. And the power of social media is dawning on me more and more so all the time. I used to shy away from being visible. I didn't necessarily like to sort of show what I was doing in public. I had that sort of, I would say, imposter syndrome of like, who am I to sort of stand here and say these things? And it was only as I sort of could see the benefits of seeing how the communities could come together, how people could come together, how people like to see success, how they like to see also the personal journey, that when I first started with podcasts, and I was doing a lot of networking in building a property portfolio for my own needs, and I can cover what that meant to us as a family. But from the perspective of helping others, that's where I come from. I understand that social media and awareness and raising awareness is critical. And that I've probably hidden behind that guise for a long time until I felt comfortable in just being who I am and sharing what I have to offer. But knowing that people will take on board what you share, they'll see your journey, they'll respect you for showing you starting from scratch. And that's when I came out with the second podcast, Focus on Why, I knew that I could just be me and I could just share, look, I'm starting this. Please support me because I feel that there's a strong message here. And that's how I've built an audience. It's being honest, it's being credible, it's being just respectful of the people who are supporting me in the podcast, of those who listen and what they value, and understanding what people need and value and what they want are just key to everything I do. And recently I had the opportunity to share something very personal. My son had a nasty knock in a rugby game. At a time, he was fine. But 2 hours later, things went downhill very fast. And we went through the concussion protocol and took him straight to hospital. Now, fast forward several hours. In fact, from the time that he had the knock through to operation, it was literally 11 hours. And he had an emergency neurosurgery, which was just, ridiculously stressful. I cannot describe how stressful it was at the time. But we got through that, and he has got through that, and we took the plaster off yesterday. So 7 days later after that happened, we took the plaster off, and he's got a 15 centimeter scar. It looks like somebody's sort of slashed his head open with a broadsword. It's just incredible how huge the work that went on. But the NHS were incredible. I was persistent in getting him treatment and in relaying the importance of the pain he was in, because he is a strong 16-year-old. He's a 6'3" lad, but he's also got a very high pain threshold. So I didn't feel that they understood quite how severe what he was sharing was. And your kids, what what pain they're going through. So as responsible as a parent, I had that responsibility to sort of share that, and then they took it more seriously, and he got the CT scan, which then revealed the bleed between the brain and the skull, and the severity of what was happening there. He'd also fractured his skull. Now, I shared that on social media after he was home and we were starting to focus on recovery. I didn't document that journey. That was too private and too concerning at the time. But what has happened is it went viral. Now, it's certainly not the circumstances that I wanted a post to go viral, to sort of see that journey. And my son is very private. He doesn't really go on social media at all. But it's had 140,000 views at the point that we're just recording this now. Incredible. I've had almost 1,000 reactions. And what I've seen from that is the power of sharing a message and what that can then do. Because now I know that other people be more aware of concussion protocol, and if that saves a life, then fantastic. And I do that also in another area. I do a lot of volunteering for cardiac risk in the young, and I support somebody who's very dear to me, or two people who have lost their sons age 16 and 18 to sudden cardiac risk. And it is such a preventable treatment. They can have a heart screening. So anyone who's aged between 14 and 35 can get a screening. And through CRY, you can do that free of charge. There's always free screenings. And I do a lot of fundraising for that to support the Anthony Fitzgerald Memorial Fund. And also, there's also another friend of mine called Paul Daniels who lost his son, Ben. And, just being aware now, it's really, there's a lot of synergy with what I do. I focus on the hearts and minds through purpose. And I'm also doing a lot of volunteering, which is focusing on the hearts and minds of people. So, yeah, it's there. I just hadn't necessarily connected those dots before this moment.
Oh, well, that's great. You heard it first on Influence. But what a heartwarming story, and one that I think resonates with so many people. I've been one of the contributors on that post, and I too saw some of the heartfelt responses. And do you think as well, because it was a very personal message, that what people are missing on social media is thinking that, I'll just promote my event, or I'll just promote this and I'll promote that. I think it's almost like people are tired of that. What they want to be able to connect with people on an emotional, personal way. And I think you've just, obviously what happened there was tragic, but with a successful outcome. Not all instances, of course, are successful, and raising awareness for concussions and all that in itself is very laudable. But yeah, it's and I've seen other examples of that, very personal messages on Facebook, on LinkedIn. They seem to get way more traction because people feel that they can connect with them. So I guess the next question has to be, who has influenced you in your life?
There have been several people, Gordon, and there have been particular people in the last 5 years, because I would say that before 2016, and it's actually Brexit, that the decision of Brexit on the 23rd of June, that sort of was a pivotal moment for many people, but for me individually, it was a moment when my business that I was working for at the time, a company I was working for, was a new startup, and I helped them to brand their business. And they struggled to see what the future was going to be like at that point. They're now thriving. They're doing fantastically. But at the time, there was a panic. There was immediate panic of what to do. And I know a lot of companies had that moment. And they said to me, do you mind reducing your days? And at that point, I was like, you know what? I've seen something that's going on in my own family. And that was my husband needed my help. And he needed my help to create a different future for us, because he couldn't sustain working where he was. It was killing him. Literally, he was working long hours. He had missed out on a huge amount of family life, and it was an opportunity for me to sort of step up into a different space. And I documented that journey. And you asked me who have been sort of influential on me. Now, there were several people who started me on the property portfolio building journey, and I am incredibly grateful to them. one particular book that happened, or I read back in December 2016, was Hal Elrod, and it's called The Miracle Morning. And he talks about the lifesavers. If you don't know Hal Elrod's story, he had an incredible journey himself, a huge car crash, which led to him barely surviving, but he did, and he had his lifesavers. And they are, as an acronym, savers are as an acronym for several different things that you can do to help you each day in the Miracle Morning process. And one of those S's is scribing. And I started journaling. And I've now been journaling for 1,770 days ever since that particular day. And this is what that looks like for those who are watching the video. That is what that looks like. Every day I write half a page of what's going on. So I had coached myself. I've taken myself through that journey over the last almost 5 years now. And every step of the day, I look at what I've achieved, and I can see that compound over time. We talk about the compound effect, and it's real. It's huge. And seeing the growth, seeing where I was yesterday, I don't compare myself with others. Now, that's something that on social media you can fall foul to, but I don't do that. I just compare to who I was yesterday and who I want to be tomorrow. And the journaling takes me through that.
No, amazing. And is that... what about from a public point of view? Are there people out there, perhaps even on social media, that you really do connect with, and you like some of their content, or that you have a personal affinity with them? Because we all know influence is about, they're changing the behaviour of other people. So, and you've identified one within the book. I was just wondering as well if there's somebody more up to, more now that has had an impact on you.
So I joined the Professional Speaking Association because I read a book called LinkedIn Bound by Sam Rathling, and I read that book back in 2019. And in February, and I was on half term with the kids skiing. And I read the book and I tagged Sam in and I said, thanks so much. This is brilliant. And I've just seen that there are Professional Speaking Association meetings that I can go to, and I'm going to go off to my first one, which I did. Within 2 weeks, I booked my ticket there and then, and I went. Now, the Professional Speaking Association, I have to say, has been hugely influential for me. So there are several members within that have created an impact on my life. And I not only joined that first meeting in that March, within a couple of weeks, my business then changed direction. And then I started recording Focus on Why. All the meetings were online because we were in lockdown. So I was attending different regional meetings. I made a huge sort of effort to meet up with as many people as I could and be influenced by what they had to say, what they were doing, what they were sharing online. And so Sam Rathling created that ripple effect. I've now gone on to become vice president for the Southeast region of the Professional Speaking Association. I'm now going to be president for next year, for 2022, for the region. And I'm very involved. I entered a competition called Speaker Factor last year. I made the final. I didn't win. But I also then encouraged a very good friend of mine for 18 years, a lady called Camilla Long, to join. She joined the PSA Ireland. She entered Speaker Factor and she's just won.
Wow,
now,
that's fantastic.
And isn't it just incredible? So from the reading, and this is where a lot of people say, reading books doesn't change lives. It doesn't sort of but it's actually what you then do as a result of it.
What you then do. Totally, yeah.
So taking action.
And talking about taking action, when we were talking earlier, before the podcast offline, we were talking about, you were saying the size of my podcast in terms of audience matters less than the actions that people take as a result of it. And I was quite intrigued by that. So what did you mean by that?
So when I first launched the podcast, I said on my first episode, I don't mind if one person listens. Then because if they listen and then they take action, that's mission accomplished.
Right.
Now, of course, we want more than one person to take action. There's a lot of work that goes into recording a podcast and releasing the episodes and being consistent with quality. But what I'm saying there is I want people to take action. Instead of just storing knowledge, they take action on it. Because it's only when you apply knowledge that you are then going to be able to affect change and change the world, not only for yourself, but for those around you. And it's about who you are. It's about what you're doing. It's about what you have. That's all within your control. And it's about what you want to have that determines who you become and what you do. So this is what I'm asking people. Are you living or are you existing? And this is the case with the podcast. When I'm talking about the download numbers, they're vanity metrics sometimes. It's important to see growth. It's as important to see impact. It's important to understand what the numbers are in terms of what's important to you and your business. Because unless your podcast is a hobby, and for many that can be the case, and that's great. But if it is something that you're using as a business tool and it's part of your journey, it's a part of what you're trying to achieve from a marketing perspective, the numbers there are the conversions into your business. That's what's important. So how many clients do you need? And how many people do you need to listen to your show? Don't get caught up in the download numbers. Get caught up in the numbers that actually matter.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Wise words. So thank you, Amy. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. How can people find out more about taking action?
Well, thank you, Gordon. It's been a pleasure. So amyrowlinson.com is easy. You can go there and you can see everything I do. And you can see I've got a weekly newsletter that I release. So you can sign up for that, the Friday Focus, which is always one key topic that I focus on with one action arising for you to take away from it. And also, yes, please tune into the podcast, Focus on Why. It's available on all platforms. Wherever you listen to podcasts, you'll find me there. So, and of course, social media. So LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram.
Awesome. Thanks again, Amy Rowlinson.